Al-Qaeda-linked fighters have blocked fuel deliveries to Mali's capital for 2 months. They want to seize territory and drive out Western influence. But could their ultimate goal be to control the country? And what would that mean for the rest of the Sahel? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. So, fighters affiliated with al-Qaeda have blocked fuel deliveries to Mali's capital for 2 months now, bringing the city to a standstill. They've sealed off the highways that tankers use to transport fuel from neighbouring Senegal and Ivory Coast, tightening the economic chokehold. And it's all put immense pressure on the landlocked Sahel country and its military government. The fighters have laid siege to towns and cities before, but this is the first time that they've used a tactic on Bamako. And the scale of the blockade and its impact shows just how much influence the armed group wields in Africa's third largest oil producer. So are al-Qaeda-linked fighters trying to take power in Mali? And what does that mean for the battle against armed groups in the Sahel region? We'll put that to our guest shortly. But first, this report from Alexandra Byers.
A city of 4 million people gone dark. For 2 months, an al-Qaeda-linked group has imposed a blockade on Mali's capital, cutting off most trade and fuel, choking economic lifelines. Satellite images show the scale of the crisis, queues stretching for kilometers across the city.
All these people are here for fuel. There's a shortage of gas at the moment. Before we could buy gas everywhere in cans, but now there's no more. We're forced to come to gas stations, and even if we go there, it's not certain that there will be gasoline available. Only a few stations have it.
Daily life in Bamako has been upended. There's only electricity for a few hours a day. Flights are disrupted. Schools and universities have closed. The US and UK have recalled their diplomatic staff, and France has urged its citizens to leave as soon as possible. Countries in the Sahel have been battling armed groups for more than 2 decades. When Mali's military seized control in a 2021 coup, it promised to restore security. It ended an agreement with former colonial power France and reached out to Russian paramilitaries instead. But the country still isn't safe.
During the escort of the fuel tanker convoys, people are dying. There are ambushes on the roads and tankers are catching fire with people inside them who are burning to death.
The al-Qaeda-linked group has expanded its reach from northern Mali into the south and west, where attacks have doubled in the past year. Fighters are now blocking 2 of the landlocked country's most vital trade routes, to the ports of Dakar and Abidjan. They have support across large areas of Mali and Burkina Faso, and analysts say they pose a threat to coastal nations like Benin, Togo, and Ghana. Mali, like most of its neighbors, has enormous potential for development. It's rich in natural resources like gold and uranium, and potentially rare earth minerals. But that same wealth is what's fueling the violence, keeping the country one of the poorest in the world. As this blockade continues, anger is growing. And while the military remains in power, it seems the al-Qaeda fighters are in control. Alexandra Byers, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
All right, so that set us up. Let's bring in our guests now. Joining us from New York is Moussa Kondo, who's Executive Director of the Sahel Institute and former Special Advisor to Mali's presidency. In Dakar is Oluwole Ojewale, the Regional Coordinator for Western Central Africa at the Institute for Security Studies, and in Paris, Nicolas, an author and former French ambassador to Mali. Warm welcome to all of you. I'd like to start in New York, if I may, with Moussa. So you're there in New York right now, but of course, normally you live in Bamako. So give us a sense of the mood in Bamako and what is the predominant feeling and what is the fear of what might be to come?
Thank you so much for having me in this conversation. First of all, I want to say and made it clear, people in Bamako are living in, daily trauma and also the frustration of not being able to express what they feel about what the shortage of the fuel and the basic needs you just mentioned, which is electricity, and also the shortage of fuel because of the blockade you mentioned from the jihadist and terrorist groups imposing on Bamako and around. So people don't have access to fuel, and they are taking on them. And some are expressing this as being resilient, but the fact of living this and not be able to express it is extra trauma people living in Bamako.
So Moussa, can I just ask you? Can I just ask you? Are people worried about the impending advance of the al-Qaeda forces, JNIM?
Yeah, I think the fact of being worried is not even more, because they kind of like, we need something. We need a clarity. We need a vision. Maybe that's why when al-Qaeda, through JNIM, when they order something, people try to execute it because they understand they better act like this and get a life saved than not execute the orders coming from them, because the government is not 100% controlling whatever happening around, not just in Bamako city, but also inside the country. And now people in Bamako are getting into what the other part of Mali been living for like a years and months right now, imposing the rules and what they think and what they say, and exactly on the speech of spokesperson Nabi Jara, who've been telling things before executing, and then they arrive to execute it 100%. That means they're not just controlling the territory, but also they're controlling the mind of people and how things are moving forward.
Okay. Oluwole, you understand very well the security situation. How dangerous a time do you think it is for Bamako and indeed Mali as a whole?
Yes, I think this is a very dangerous time, particularly looking at the trajectory of terrorist groups across the world in the recent time. JNIM, the al-Qaeda affiliate in the Sahel, has seen what the HTS was able to do in Syria. They've also seen what the Taliban did in Afghanistan, in that after 20 years of spending more than $1 trillion, they outlived America and all the power and the ammunitions that they actually mobilized into Afghanistan. So there is a palpable fear among people living in West Africa, Malians, and a crop of analysts all over the places that what is loading in Bamako might be a replica of Syria 2.0. So I think it's a serious concern, not only for Malians, but for the entire West African bloc. Because if this group becomes audacious, if they were able to achieve their political objective in Mali, then it has a serious and potential cascading effects. This will be the first time that such experiment is going to happen in West Africa. If at all, if it happens, although some people believe it is not going to happen, that they do not have the projected capability to be able to do that. But when you look at what the data is saying, particularly in the last 5 years, the sheer number of fatality and incidents in Bamako, in Mali, and coupled with what the first speaker just mentioned now, that what is happening in Bamako now has been the experience, the taste of other people living in northern Mali and other part and central Mali in the past 5 years or so, then we all have a reason to be genuinely concerned in terms of the multiple.
Let me bring in the ambassador, the former ambassador in France, in Paris. So, Ambassador, what do you think? How dangerous a situation is this? Is this Syria 2.0? Is it likely to happen unfold in that way?
Well, anyway, the situation is not comparable to that of Kabul in 2021, for instance. In Afghanistan, there were a huge army of the Taliban. There were about 80,000 military. There in Bamako, around Bamako, there are fewer than a few thousands militants of al-Qaeda, of the JNIM. The JNIM is the name of this jihadist movement. They are not in a position to take over Bamako, to take seize of Bamako, and they may just undertake a few attacks. Last year, in 2024, they have undertaken a successful attack on the airport and also on a barrack, but it lasted a few hours and they had to withdraw immediately. And that would be the same thing. But they are going to weaken the military junta in power in Bamako. And they may, if this blockade is protracted, if it lasts longer, and if the situation economically deteriorates in Bamako, there may be a strong pressure on the military junta either to have a big turmoil among themselves. There may be a new coup. Maybe some military will try to take power instead of the present ones, or they will also may agree to negotiate with the jihadists. Already, it seems that a number of people outside the government, outside the authority, is going to try to negotiate with the jihadists, with Yad Agali, who is the chief of the jihadists. Yad Agali would be ready to discuss and to find a compromise. Maybe the Syrian example with al-Shara would be followed by Yad Agali. He could even cut any link with al-Qaeda to find a sort of a compromise with the political authorities in Bamako.
Okay.
I think this is his goal.
Okay, so Moussa, what do you make of that and the potential for some kind of power-sharing agreement? I mean, how would that be accepted or not, first of all, in rural areas and then in cities like Bamako itself?
I just want to come back on what Ambassador Nicolas just mentioned. I think now, like 2 years ago, we could say that. But now I think is obviously what my colleague from Dakar just mentioned is very likely to happen, because since now, when you take the latest spokesperson of the JNIM in the recent event, he's the Bambara guy. He's from the Bambara ethnic group. That means the recruitment is no more based on the Fulani community. They are recruiting people and young people, especially from the southern and western regions of Mali. So that means the growing capacity, not just in terms of equipment, but also in terms of recruitment and the diversity of the people, the fighters. That's one thing. The second thing is the number of places, region, and villages under 100% the control of the JNIM and these terrorist groups inside the country, because they oblige people to sign deal with them so they can continue to live a kind of ordinary life, which takes them out of the control of the government and put them in the control of the terrorist groups. They kind of work for them.
Okay.
Right.
But what about this concept? I just want to bring in the ambassador's point about the concept of it's given the al-Qaeda group JNIM, it's given them heft, it's given them the ability to negotiate. They have a stronger negotiating position. And what about the potential for them having that power sharing agreement, which could then lead to what you're talking about?
I think this is the scaring part of it, because with the cancellation of all political parties and the arrest of the 11 political leadership in Bamako, and also putting the former Prime Minister Moussa in prison, this kind of dislocate all the union and also the possibility of working of internal actors in Mali. So these internal actors been having a relationship with the jihadist group before they entered in jihadist era. So that means there is a conversation, and the union, the collaboration, and coming together is like the negotiation between the jihadist group and some political leaders, religious leaders, and civil society actors in Bamako right now. So which facilitates the taking over of what remains of Bamako in terms of authority and the control of the state. Because the JNIM guys now control the security on the ground. They even attacked the ministerial delegations 60 kilometers out of Bamako and kind of impose a siege on Bamako. So now what is remaining is going to action and taking Bamako, because the population in Bamako will not accept living on the Sharia movement. But when they got like a local political leaders and the religious leaders, it kind of getting easier for them to convince people like, okay, you are political leaders, you can take, and I think for the negotiation right now is around this, but not the control.
Oluwole, let me bring you in there. Sorry to jump in, but we need to press on. Oluwole, what's your view on that, and what's the potential is for negotiation as far as the military is concerned, the current government of Mali, to try and develop a stronger position than it has at the moment?
Thank you once again. I think it looks very, very unlikely, at least for the arrogance of the military. And on the second note, to the Malians generally, because it will be tantamounting to having a government composed by two illegitimate groups, which was not put in place by the Malians themselves. And looking at the trajectory of these Central Sahel states in the past 3 years, the fallout with ECOWAS, the bruise that they gave France in those countries, the isolationist agenda that they've been pursuing for a while now. If they did not embrace international security cooperation and they choose who is going to be their partner in Russia, it is very, very unlikely that then they are going to form partnership with the jihadist group. But I would like to be proven wrong in the coming days, but I don't see the military going into any agreement with those jihadist groups.
Ambassador, what's your take on it?
Well, they are not desirous to discuss with the jihadists, obviously. They are very against the idea of negotiating. I am speaking of the military who are not, actually currently in power in Bamako. But maybe there is a scenario in which this military junta would be very weakened, would lose the trust of the population. There could be a pressure coming from the population towards the military, towards the power to negotiate. This has been the case already in the past. Imam Diko, who is presently in Algeria, wanted himself to negotiate to be a mediator between the jihadists and the power. So there are possibilities to negotiate. And also, Yad Agali may be also, as I said, more pragmatic than ordinary jihadists. He may try to find a compromise. So there will be, not now, certainly not now, but in the foreseeable future, a few months, maybe more than that from now, there could be a possibility of a negotiation. This is not the current situation. And the current situation is a stalemate. There is an impasse. The situation is deteriorating, but the jihadists are not in a position to take over. They do not control any urban area in Mali. They control only small villages and rural areas. They are not powerful enough to conquer Bamako, but they are powerful enough to install a blockade, an economic blockade, and to attack the trucks, the tank trucks, and so on. So the situation should change at a time. It cannot stay the same for months. So we have to try to forecast some scenarios.
Moussa, I just want to try and assess how we got to this point and to what degree history plays a role in this. In the first instance, the legacy of France and French colonialism. What is your take on that?
I think in the Sahel and generally in the Francophone Africa, France did some mistakes. And even the French leadership back in the days when the thing started in Sahel region, it recognized there were certain mistakes to be corrected, but also the military regimes in our countries used a lot in terms of communication, in terms of propaganda, these mistakes to highlight how French is not a serious and no more a vital partner for them in the region. And that's why we've seen all this, what they say, the hate against France. I would say not against France, but against the France policy in Africa in general. And since then, if the things had to change, it had to start from where how they call it, the patronizing countries and how they call the leadership in Francophone Africa president or leadership positions. So this lead to find new partners. And they found naturally this in Russia, not just because Russia wanted to be in the area, because Russia also was struggling under all the sanctions and bans since the beginning of the conflict with Ukraine. And this kind of really facilitating the outing of France and also the coming of Russia, and not just Russia, China and also Turkey in the region. So for me, the outing of France was based on very specific mistakes France did or made, even though these former colonies were no more under the control of France, but independent state as republics.
All right, Ambassador, let me ask you to come back on that. And could a worsening crisis, Ambassador, prompt France to re-engage?
France is not going to re-engage because Bamako is not willing, does not want France to come back, certainly. Even if there is a new government, I think it will not change much. And France also has had a very bad experience in Mali. So they are not going to come back anyway. Maybe the best scenario for France and possibly for Mali would just be a normalization of the relationships. For the time being, there is a French diplomat in custody, in prison, in jail, in Bamako. So it shows the degree of a very bad relationship between the two countries. So there is a room for improvement, but not for a formal reconciliation, and there will be no return of the past. And France is still regarded as a scapegoat of all the evils that befall Mali. There is a legacy of colonization. There is also the failure of France to submit the jihadists during the Barkhane, the military French operation. They did not really succeed. And the country of Mali does not develop economically speaking. So for many Malians, it is the fault of France. Even if it's not the case, it's easy to designate a culprit for their problem, for their evils.
All right.
And we are the scapegoat.
Okay, Oluwole, what's your take on what the ambassador has just been saying? And also, let me ask you the question as we draw to a close in this programme. If not France, then who can help resolve this crisis?
Yes, thank you. Two things. One, yes, Mali and the other Central Sahel state and largely Francophone countries in West Africa have issues, scores to settle with France, no doubt. But we need to underscore the fact that it is a political logjam. If you go on the street of Bamako, on the street of Senegal, or Niger, Burkina Faso today, an average young Malian or Senegalese or Nigerian or any of those countries, and you present two options to them: travel to France or travel to Russia or any partner that those countries have chosen in the recent time. There is still a very strong affinity between France and those countries. And that is the reason why I know that the isolationist tendencies it is not really going to work on the long run in terms of decoupling from France. Even the democratically elected president that promised that in the recent time in West Africa, we've seen how far they've been able to go. So I think I have a different perspective that the relationship between France and the colonial, the countries that they colonize in West Africa and other parts of Africa is only going through a moment of disruption. But there are foundational and historical ties that can be leveraged to mend those frictions in the coming days. It might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, but I don't think it's a relationship that is going to go soon. Who can help? I think Mali needs to really diversify their security cooperation and partnership. Even if they don't want to work with France, there are other countries that they can work with. You can't just tarnish every country with Western America, Western UK, Western and everything Western. So I think they really need to diversify their security cooperation.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed to our guests, to Moussa, Kondo, Oluwole, Ojewale, and Nicolas. And thank you too for watching. You can follow all our coverage on the story anytime by visiting our website. Aljazeera.com is the address, and further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Nick Clark, and the whole team here, it's goodbye for now.